So we are in the 14th chapter of Revelation. Let us read the first 5 verses. Revelation chapter 14, verses 1 to 5. I would read.
Verses 1 to 5. Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb, standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of rushing waters, and like a loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of harpists playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are those who did not defile themselves with women, for they remained virgins. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among mankind and offered as firstfruits to God and the Lamb. No lie was found in their mouths. They are blameless.
Okay, thank you. Now, Revelation chapter 14 is one of the most difficult chapters in Revelation to interpret because of the seeming discontinuity of the events mentioned in that chapter. So, one of the problems that we have when studying the Bible is the chapter divisions. Now, chapter divisions put us in a difficult situation in the sense that when we start reading a chapter, we forget or we try to disconnect in our mind the previous chapter. We think that this is a kind of a new episode that we are trying to tell. But in many instances, chapter divisions are not in appropriate places. Many examples that we can bring. You go and read Isaiah 52 and 53. The last few verses of Isaiah 52 is being continued in Isaiah 53. Similarly, about the last 3 the chapter 19, chapter 20, chapter 21 of Revelation consist of 7 visions. But then because of the chapter divisions, we think, or many think, that those events are not in sequence. Therefore, they take it out of sequence. So I can give you many examples like that. So it is important for us to keep in mind what we studied in the last chapter properly, and then see, and a little bit of help from our Greek scholars will help us to have the right division, because usually the chapters are divided at paragraph breaks. When you write a letter, the only the mark of a new section is basically a paragraph mark. So it is appropriate to look at a paragraph in Greek, and you see that there is no paragraph mark between the last of chapter 13 and the first of chapter 14. So it ought to be some kind of continuity there. Okay. So what are the what's the problem that I'm trying to bring about here? What are the difficulties that we have in this chapter? Maybe you know it, or maybe you do not know. So, but I want to just present before you some questions that we ought to ask when we read portions like this. Because if you want to get the right answers, you must ask the right questions. So I want to share my screen now. some of the questions that I think that comes out of from this portion that we just read. If you look carefully, some of the questions would be like, for example, one question is, where do we place this event in the final 70th week of Daniel? Right. For example, we just read a portion here concerning the 144,000 people, and there are more questions to add. But where do we place this event? What is there's something that is happening in Mount Zion, the lamp there, and the 144 standing with the lamb, but they are hearing a voice from heaven about a choir singing, and they were the only one who were able to sing along with them, and their description of who they are and so on. So that's basically what it is. So, but where do we place this? When did this happen in the 70th week? So something that we need to answer, try to find some answers. The second question that I think from this portion is this Mount Zion. Is this in heaven or on earth? Or this is a earthly place, or is it in heaven? Are they already in heaven, or are they on earth? Is this Mount Zion literal, or is it a figurative to speak about the eternal city of God? Something that we need to again counter. So another thing is 144,000. Obviously, of course, there's only another number we see in Revelation chapter 7. Are they the same people, or are they different? It's another question that we could try to find answers. They are virgins. Okay, so it's one of the descriptive clauses is that they are virgins, that they did not have any relationship with women in this sense. So is it literal or figurative, or is this just a figurative way of saying that they are pure, or they are holy people, or are they really celibates, that those men did not marry, or single men dedicated themselves for service of God? Something that again we need to find out. What does it mean that they are the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb? What do we understand this? Like it's mentioned there that they are first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. In what way can we say that they are first fruits? We know about what is first fruit, but in what way are these 144,000 people? They are the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. The last question I thought will deal with this. And their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. What is the basis of this statement? It looks like they are blameless, they're perfect before God. So what is the basis of the statement? What did they do in order to be said that they are without fault before the throne of God? That they become a special kind of level they reached. What does it mean? Okay, so these are some of the difficulties or some of the questions that we need to tackle. And please give me your undivided attention as we try to tackle this. We cannot be really dogmatic in some areas, but we'll try to attempt to give an answers for these questions. So first, before I proceed, I want to just step back and explain the panoramic view or a eagle's eye view of the 70th week and the things that are following the 70th week. So please look at this chart. Now, this chart is only some lines and so on. I'm going to fill up this chart, okay, one by one. So please follow me as I go through this. Go through the 70th week chart. Okay. So now the first thing that happens in the 70th week is in the beginning of the 70th week, and the marker we see in Daniel chapter 9 is that 70th week, or 70 weeks are appointed to thy people for many things. And that 70 weeks description is cut short or divided into 3 groups. The first 49 and the next 62. So the first 7 weeks, next 62 weeks, and the last one. So that is how those 70 weeks were divided. 7 plus 62 is 69. 69 plus 1 is 70. So, and the 70th week is given a lot of description. So that's why the beginning of the 70th week is the Antichrist making covenant with many. That is what we read in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. That's a very pivotal verse. He shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week. So there is this marker that the first portion or the first beginning of that 70th week is that he will make a covenant with many. So here is a time that Antichrist will make a covenant or confirm the covenant which is already there with many. I hope it is the neighbors, it is with Israel and its neighbors, basically trying to solve the Israel-Palestine problem, which is a tough nut to crack for many world leaders. And Antichrist is going to bring about an amicable solution to this issue, and he will try to win the favor of both Jews and Gentiles and try to confirm this covenant. And that marks his entry, and that marks the beginning of the 70th week. So we need to piece together information here. So this first, the 70th week is divided into 2. The first 3.5 years, which is described as the beginning of birth pangs by Jesus in the Olivet Discourse. And we see that the beginning of birth pangs also is described in the Revelation as seals, or the beginning seals, at least. So if you look at, study both Revelation 6 and Matthew 24, you will see the first seal, which is Jesus explaining as false Christ. In Revelation 6, we see about the man or the Antichrist coming on the white horse with a bow. So the first seal is a sign that false Christ and Antichrist, and the culmination of that in Antichrist coming and trying to make an entry, and a deceptive entry into the world stage. That is the first seal that we see, or the beginning of birth time. The second seal is once he has established himself as a world leader in the world stage. The second seal is wars and rumors of war. In Revelation chapter 6, we see wars. In Matthew 24, Jesus telling about the rumors of war. So he's going to conquer the remaining parts of the world, which is not under his jurisdiction, or has not come under him. He's going to use force in order to bring them under subjugation to him, to force people to submit to him. And therefore there will be wars. That is the red horse mentioned in the second seal. The third seal, which we see the pale horse, the black horse, is the famine which is going to come because of the effects of war that the Antichrist is unleashing. The fourth seal is tribulation because of the economic embargo that is going to come because of the Antichrist making it mandatory for selling, for buying and selling. And I forgot to mention one other thing last time when we saw about the 13th chapter, was that buying and selling includes both goods and services. Okay. For example, if I want to sell something in the market, I need a mark, some product in the market. Let it be the food item or any other item that I make. I make furniture and I want to sell, I can't sell. I have got some food from my farm or some vegetables from my farm, I can't sell because I don't have a mark. But then it is not only the food items that I cannot sell my services also. Suppose I'm an electrician, I'm a plumber, and I want to work for someone. And obviously they will ask for the mark. So that will rule out the jobs, for believers at that time. They can't go and work for a corporate because they cannot sell, because job is basically selling your service. You are a consultant, or you are an engineer, or you're a doctor, or you have any profession. You're trying to sell your service. And an obvious question or obvious restriction that the Antichrist is going to put is that before you apply for a job, you need to, just like your ID card, you need to provide this mark upon your hand, on your forehead. So that will exclude you from any corporate job, any job that will pay you. So again, it's a very difficult situation where you will lose your job in the corporate sector. You lose your job, and so you cannot sell your services. So this is the thing that fourth seal is up. So this is the time when you see the midpoint of tribulation, right? The middle point of tribulation, where the Antichrist is going to bring about the great tribulation that we see after. So that is a bookmark, that he will stand, the abomination that causes desolation, standing in the holy place, which will mark the beginning of the great tribulation that Jesus was also talking about in the Olivet Discourse. So immediately after the midpoint of the 70th week, this great tribulation is going to start, and two groups will be especially targeted. They are the Jews and the Christians, for their faith, because both of these groups will refuse to bow down to the force of Antichrist. Jews because of the force of their religion, Christians because of their faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. And they will not bow, and they will not give in to this force of Antichrist. So Antichrist will persecute the believers in a big way during that time. So during this time, there will be a lot of martyrs, and that is what the fifth seal is about. The fifth seal is about martyrdom, right? We see the martyrs crying under the altar, "How long, O Lord, are you going to avenge us?" And they was given the answer that wait for some more time. That means the judgment of God is not yet there. It is still future. It's not yet come. So that means they are into the great tribulation, but into the second part of the 3.5 years, and they have still waiting for God's judgment to come. They're asked to wait till few more of them or the other brothers may join them. So that means judgment of God is forward or future, looking from the perspective of the martyrs already martyred in heaven. So they were given the ropes to wear. They're asked to wait. So that is the fifth seal. And the sixth seal is what we call the next 3.5, which is called the celestial disturbances that is going to come. And I already told you that there are 4 major descriptive events that are going to happen before the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is the wrath of God and not the wrath of man. So we need to differentiate between the wrath of man and the wrath of God. The day of the Lord is always closely connected to the wrath of God upon his enemies. It is never the tribulation or the problems that the people of God go through. That's very distinctively we see. So the seventh seal begins the day of the Lord, where the wrath of God will be unleashed. So, but beginning before that, we see the rapture and the resurrection of God's people. Now, if you look at Matthew chapter 24, there are three major events mentioned there in Matthew chapter 24 towards the end. One is the celestial disturbances that will happen after the Great Tribulation, immediately after the tribulation of those days. We see there in Matthew 24. So that means the sequence is first the tribulation in that the world has not seen before, that great tribulation where the Antichrist is going to persecute God's people. And immediately after the tribulation, that means there is no time gap between the tribulation and the celestial disturbances. So immediately the tribulation of those days, what will happen is the sun will be darkened and moon will not give light, and you will see this disturbances that is happening with respect to stars and so on. So first tribulation, then we see the celestial disturbance, then we see the Son of Man coming. So there are two distinctive things happening before the Son of Man coming. One is the tribulation, another is the celestial disturbances. But the Old Testament adds two more things to happen before the day of the Lord. We saw in Malachi chapter 4 that the prophecy concerning Elijah coming before the day of the Lord. So Elijah, we saw partial fulfillment of that happening in John the Baptist. But after John the Baptist had been beheaded by Herod, in the 17th chapter of Matthew, Jesus is telling Elijah will come. That means the fulfillment of this prophecy in Malachi was only partially fulfilled in the life of John the Baptist. The real fulfillment this was yet future. So I already mentioned to you that there is this prophetic word of Elijah coming. We cannot be dogmatic as to the real Elijah or a prophet similar to Elijah. But anyway, there is a forerunner who is going to come before the second coming of Jesus. Just like there was a forerunner called John the Baptist. He was not a literal Elijah. He was coming in the spirit of Elijah. John the Baptist came making way for the Christ to come in the first coming of Jesus. Similarly, there is this Elijah who will come and make way for the second coming of Jesus. So there are some similarities that is between John the Baptist and this second Elijah who is coming. John the Baptist's ministry started before the Lord's ministry. So in the end, we also will see that this ministry of the second Elijah or the final Elijah is going to start before the day of the Lord, before the rapture and resurrection. So I believe that the time period of their ministry is given 1,260 days. 1,260 days is, that means around 3.5 Jewish years of the ministry. So the ministry will culminate by the Antichrist killing them. So their ministry will start at the same time of the midpoint of the 70th week, and they will minister for 1,260 days, and the ministry will culminate by the end of the 70th week. The second thing is the appearance of Antichrist, as we see in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. So that means the appearance of Antichrist is what the middle point of tribulation. Antichrist was there in the beginning, but he was not identified. He will not be identified as the Antichrist. He will be made celebrated as a statesman during time. But he will be clearly identified by the world as the Antichrist, or the son of perdition, when he sits himself in the holy place. That's when people will really see that he is indeed the Antichrist. So he's the appearance of Antichrist according to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And the third descriptive event that is going to happen, or that is prophesied before the day of the Lord, is the great apostasy. As I told you, this is again mentioned in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Before the day of the Lord, the falling away has to happen. Now, there are approximately 2 billion people who claim themselves to be Christians in the world today. If you ask them, by name, I said, many of them will not say they are Christians, but by name they are Christians. So let us set aside all those people who are not calling themselves Christian, even though they have Christian names and or Christian parents and so on. But let us take those people who call themselves Christians. Now, here is the point, that a person is going to, a great test is going to come regarding their faith. That is a time when the worship of the beast, or the image of the beast, is made mandatory by taking up the mark upon your hand and on your forehead. So the question comes is that now the religion or the faith is not tested in one way, in the sense that you're not asked to pay a price for your faith. Today, if you go to church or if you don't go to church, doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter in the physical sense. There's no punishment. But a time is going to come that you're going to pay a big cost in order to serve the Lord. And what is that cost? The cost is that you cannot buy or sell. That means you will be severely restricted. You lose your job again. I mean, you lose your position in society, and you will be ostracized and singled out in the whole world. So there is a great price that one has to go and pay. Now, the problem that is going to happen, or the issue that is going to happen, is that a great number of Christians believe, sincerely I would say, believe that they will be taken up before all this happens. So the deception is this. The deception is that they sincerely believed, the sincere believers, but sincerely believed that they will not be there during the tribulation period. So when the tribulation actually comes, they will be confused. And there were two responses. One, that they think that this is not tribulation, or they make to think that this is not tribulation and this is not the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast and all will come only after we are being raptured from this world. So there is no problem in taking this mark. That is a kind of logical conclusion that they make. But you see, that is a falling away, because we see in chapter 14, in the same chapter that we are going to discuss, that anyone who is going to take the mark of the beast, their reward or their end is in the lake of fire. Very clear, because it is mentioned in chapter 14, verse 9 to 13, that any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark on his forehead, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. Now we know that is the end. So there is a great apostasy that is going to happen at the end time. The second confusion that will happen is because of this tribulation. They will be so discouraged. They were not prepared themselves for this. And that is the time that they will think, and often they will try to save their lives by bowing down to the beast. And it's a very sad affair, and that's why this prophetic word is very important, and that we are more serious to tell to our fellow brothers that, my friends, this is not the scenario, this is what the Bible teaches. Okay, so that is apostasy that is going to happen. And the final thing that we see before the coming of the Lord are the celestial disturbances, the sun getting dark, moon not giving its light, and meteorites falling down, and there is a very clear evidence in the sky before. So look at these four things that will happen before the day of the Lord, and this is very clear sign that the day of the Lord is approaching. The matters which are going to happen, these things are happening at such a great pace that there is no time to think about these things at that time. So, okay, so the rapture and resurrection is taking place at an unknown time, because we really know that it is between the midpoint of the 70th week and the last of the 70th week, but we cannot really put that date, because the persecution will go on, and Jesus said, no flesh will be saved if those days are not cut short, in Matthew chapter 24. But he gives a promise there, very, very comforting promise. The promise is that those days will be cut short because of the elect. Because of the elect, those days shall be shortened. So here is the clue that this tribulation time is going to be shortened because of the elect, because of God's people. God is going to have mercy upon us. He is going to cut short these days. But that does not mean that Antichrist is destroyed at that particular time. That does not mean that the reign of Antichrist is ended. It only means that the persecution has ended, has come to a halt, and it is going to, and that marker is that immediately after the tribulation of those days. That means in verse 29 of chapter 24, that means tribulation has ended. Once you see the celestial disturbances, that means the tribulation has ended. But then the celestial disturbance is the last thing that is going to happen before the coming of the Lord. Then you see the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, the powers of the heaven shall be shaken, and then, verse 30, shall appear the sign of this. So the tribulation will end, the celestial disturbances will happen, and then you see the Son of Man coming. So that is a time when you see the rapture, which has been explained in Matthew 24, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, 1 Corinthians chapter 15. All these are events that the children of God will be taken up to heaven. The resurrection happens of the saints. They are with the Lord. So that is the time that we will see there, somewhere between the midpoint of the 70th week and the last of the 70th week. So that's where the rapture and resurrection will take place. And after this happens, we see in Revelation chapter 7 that there is a group on earth called 144,000 from the Israel, that they are sealed. We do not see that, we see the purpose of that sealing in Revelation chapter 9. The purpose of that sealing is to protect them from the wrath of God that are to follow. The wrath of God to follow. So we see that 144,000 people being sealed, and there is a great multitude which cannot be numbered in heaven. So that means the rapture has taken place there, and this great number before the throne of God. So this switching back, the camera is switching back between earth and heaven, and there is this picture of heaven in which the great multitude standing before the throne of God, already been taken out from this earth, from the tribulation, and Antichrist cannot do anything for them. So there is this great multitude there, and we are told that they have come out of the tribulation. That means their time is over. They have come. They are there already in the throne of God, and they will not have any more possibility of persecution, any more of the difficulties, that they shall not hunger anymore. They will be physically relieved, spiritually relieved, emotionally comforted. All those things we saw in chapter 7. But after that, we see the day of the Lord beginning. And the day of the Lord is not a day of peace, but it is a day of vengeance. It is a day in which God is going to fight against his enemies. And there is where the beginning of the inauguration of the trumpet judgments. So the seventh seal opening, there is no particular event that happened except the proclamation or the declaration of the trumpets to follow. That all the seven angels ready to blow the trumpet were ready at the blowing of the seventh seal. So seventh seal, the day of the Lord begins, and the trumpet judgments are about to commence. And we saw the trumpet judgments happening one by one there. So we saw the sixth trumpet, the four trumpets, which is having effects upon the earth and those there, and then the next two trumpets trying to have effects upon the people. The fifth trumpet is talking about the locust attack, and the sixth trumpet is about the men of the earth, 1/3 of them being wiped away there. So there in that sixth trumpet is God opening up and showing us some more things that is going to happen towards the end of the 70th week. And we saw in chapter 11 about the Son of Man or the angel of the Lord, the mighty angel coming and standing upon the earth. And we discussed about it, about the feast of the Lord and the last three feasts, the fall feast, where the beginning of that is the trumpet call for people to gather, people to come. And we discussed that this is a call for all the Israelites to come. It is a definite recognition that, or a time for all the Israelites to come to their land, for being brought together. We saw that in Isaiah. That the people of the Lord are going to come in great number, or the Israelites are going to come in great number back to Israel for a time of national reconciliation. We saw that is at future. We saw the three stages of the dry bone vision given to Ezekiel in chapter 37. The bones that were scattered, we saw the Israelites being scattered all over the world. And we see the second stage of that, where the bones are gathered and the veins and the muscles and the sinews and all those put together in place, and the skin has been formed and the beauty is formed. So we saw that happened in 1947 with Israel becoming a nation, and the bones which were dry and scattered in different parts of the world were brought together into a nation. We see that in Isaiah 66, can a nation be born in one day? It's a rhetorical question. Nations are born in centuries and years and so on. But here, a nation is born in a day. Right? When this declaration was made, independence was given to Israel, and they became a nation. So people from different parts of the world came back to the land of Palestine. They became a nation. They had a military. They had economic progress. Today, it's a very prosperous nation in the Middle East. So the second part of that prophecy was fulfilled during this last 70 years. But there's yet another part of prophecy yet to be fulfilled. That is the third part, is that skeleton which came the bones that came together to become physical bodies, and with muscles and skin and beauty and so on, doesn't have life. That means the spiritual revival of Israel is yet future. It does not happen today. Today you go to Israel, most of the Jews or Israelites are proud people. They are hardened and they do not have anything to do with God. So they are depending upon their military might, about their economic prosperity, and about their intellectual capabilities. All of those they're very proud of. but they have not humbled themselves to accept Jesus as their Messiah and their future Redeemer. So there is a time that is going to come in the future where Israel is going to look up to God as their Savior, and they're going to come in large numbers. So this is what we saw in Romans chapter 11, that partial hardening has happened to Israel, yet in this way all Israel will be saved. So there is a time in which Israel as a nation is going to turn to God, and that will be a massive revival time. So this trumpet call for people to come and see that the Messiah is already there in the promised land, and it is a very visible proclamation. So that's happening upon the sixth trumpet. That's very near to the seventh trumpet. And we see that second fall feast is about the Day of Atonement, in which a day of national mourning, right? We very clearly see in the book of Leviticus that anyone who is not mourning or during the time shall be cut off from the people. That means it is a very serious thing. Or I told you, Jews usually don't wish each other during the period between the Feast of the Trumpets and the Great Day of Atonement. Those 10 days in that month of Tishri that I was talking about, they did not greet one another by shalom. They were asking the question, is your name written in the book of heaven? That is the kind of question that they ask. It's a time for them to consider their eternal destiny. So these days which are preceding the Day of Atonement, the day of mourning or self-searching, in which Israel will be thoroughly searching about their eternal destiny and where they are going. And we see that on the Day of Atonement, that they will come back and turn to God and ask God, and God is going to forgive their sins. So that will bring the end of the 70th week. So here, if you see the end of the 70th week is a time when they're going to see that they're going to come to God as a nation, and they're going to turn to God, because in the book of Daniel we read in 24, the 70 weeks are appointed to many things: to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So there are many things mentioned, but one of the things mentioned is to make an end of sins and to make a reconciliation for iniquity. So this is the day on which the reconciliation for iniquity is made to Israel as a nation. As individuals, we see that the Passover time is a time that people could come and see the Passover lamb sacrificed for them. But as a nation, this is a day of national day of the great Day of Atonement, where they will come and turn to God as a nation. So it's very important to see that the end of the 70th week will mark the time when the Israel will come to God as a nation. But the story does not end there in the 70th, the end of 70th week. There are a few things also mentioned. So I would like you to read one important passage in chapter Daniel, in the 12th chapter of Daniel. One of you can please come there in the 12th chapter of Daniel. And verses, can we read the full chapter? 12th chapter of Daniel. Yes.
Daniel chapter 12. At that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation. Even to that time, and at the time of time, your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. And many those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others, one on this river bank and the other on that river bank. And one said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? Then I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swore by him who lives forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time. And when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. Although I heard, I did not understand. Then I said, my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. But you go your way till the end, for you shall rest and will arise to your inheritance at the end of the days. So, is it audible? Was it audible?
Oh, I was on mute. Okay, I'm sorry. I was on mute. Okay, I was telling about three time periods that were mentioned in chapter 12. I'm audible, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. There were three time periods that were mentioned in this chapter, chapter 12. First time period is in verse 7, that he held up his right hand and his left hand up to heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time, when he shall accomplish to scatter the power of the holy people. So this is a time then the people of God will be humbled and be brought to God. So that time period is 1,260 days, which is 3.5 years. So that is the time period, which is the first block of the time period. So till the time that the power of the holy people will be scattered, they will be humbled and they will be brought to God. That will be the end of the 70th week, 1,260 days. But if you look at this last few verses and the final words of the angel to Daniel, he's telling the time of the end. Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So here's two other time periods. From the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that God makes desolation set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Now this is another time period. So 1,260 is this point where the end of this. This time period is 1,290. That means 30 days in here, 30 days here. And this 30 days is the time taken for the wrath of God poured out in order for the destruction of the Antichrist, because the abomination that causes desolation will be extended 30 days in order to be exposed to the wrath of God there. So 1,290 days, which is for the Israelites days of mourning, but for them the bowl judgment that is going to come. That is a final fury which is going to happen within a span of 30 days, which will end up in the destruction of the Antichrist. So that is this time period of 1,290 days. But then there is another time period also mentioned. So that the end of the 30 days, we see in Revelation chapter 19 that the Lord is going to come and is going to destroy the Antichrist. We'll come to that. I'll give you more details about that, which is the Armageddon battle, where the Antichrist is going to have a one last shot against God, against the land, against God's people, but he'll be destroyed there in Armageddon. And we see that Antichrist and false prophet are defeated along with his armies and thrown into the lake of fire in chapter 19. So that is the time that is going. But there is another time period mentioned here. Blessed is he that waiteth and comes to the 1,335 days. So here is another 45-day period which is going to happen after the Armageddon, which is in the Jewish calendar. It is a days of restoration. Now there is a festival that is we see in John's Gospel. If you can just read chapter 10 verse 22, John chapter 10 verse 22.
Now it was the feast of dedication in Jerusalem, and it was winter.
Okay.
And Jesus walked in the temple in Solomon's porch.
Yes. Now, if you look at the history of this feast of dedication, now this is not one of the 7 feasts. This is a feast that happened 75 days after the Great Day of Atonement there. So this is a feast that was commemorated of the cleansing of the temple during the 400 years of silence. And it is a memorial of that time when the Antiochus Epiphanes tried to desecrate the temple. And if you read the Maccabees revolt in history and all, you will see there is the Jews had a day in which they really cleansed the temple of all the abominations, of all the filth and defilement, and they're dedicated once again for the service of God. So this time is what is mentioned in John chapter 10 as a feast of dedication, as a time that the Jews marked. And I believe that this end of this 75 days is as 1,335 days is at the time when the Lord is going to begin his 1,000 years of reign. We read in chapter 20, Revelation chapter 20, about the 1,000 years of reign, and in that the Satan being bound, and for the 1,000 years, and the 1,000 years millennial reign of Christ is going to happen from that time. And we see that the end of the 1,000 years is the Gog-Magog war that is going to happen again in Revelation 20. We look into it in more detail, but I'm giving you a panoramic view. Satan in the lake of fire, thrown into the lake, destroyed and thrown into the lake of fire. The resurrection of the ungodly and the great white throne happening at the end of the 1,000 years. And then after that, is what we see, the new heavens and the new earth in chapter 21. So those whole time, from the time of Armageddon, where Antichrist is destroyed, the time God is going to begin his reign on this earth. There was a time of devil having supremacy. Then the God's wrath been poured out, and there is a time that God is going to reign in the future. So this is a panoramic view of what is going to happen. Many things I have not explained in detail, but just for you to follow after I made this chart, and they'll explain the importance of Revelation 14. We try to answer those questions tomorrow. God bless. As we have this picture before us, God has given us a roadmap of what is going to happen in the future. So let us be eager and waiting, and thank God for all his manifold blessings to us in giving us this future roadmap of what is going to happen. Let us ask the Lord to give us more clarity as we proceed with our study, and when we place the events that we see in those chapters in that correct place, and then we will be always be sure when these things happen, that we will not be worried or will not be perplexed, that God is going about according to his timetable. And the Lord bless us as we meditate upon these things.